Good morning, everybody, from a very warm London. Lovely sun is shining. Things are looking brighter as we slowly come out of lockdown. It's good that you're all tuning in. And this morning, we're going to talk about the meal experience. I hope you've got the PowerPoint. I hope you're all well. And I do hope that you're going to enjoy this session this morning. Now, when people dine out, they dine out for an experience. We're very much in the experience economy. The decor, the chef, the food, the service, the ambience is all part of this experience. And what we must learn, first of all, is that if people have decided to eat out, that there follows they have made a conscious choice to do this in preference to other sort of action. This is also could well be part of their entertainment, their birthday celebration, their anniversary celebration. In other words, the food service operator, which is what we all are, has attracted the customer to buy the product against some other product. For example, rather going to the theatre, cinema, or for staying at home. So they're buying an experience. And the reasons for eating out may be summarized as the following headings which you have on your PowerPoint. Convenience. First of all, for example, being unable to return home in the case of shoppers or people at work or involved in some leisure activity. People eat out for convenience. Variety, for trying a new experience. And a break away from home cooking. More and more people in the UK are buying processed food. They're buying takeaways because they don't want to cook at home. Labour, for example, getting someone else to prepare, serve and wash up, or simply the physical impossibilities of staggering special events at home or staging special events at home. It's, people at certain times of their life, they want to go out because they don't want the inconvenience at home. They don't want the washing up. They don't want to purchase the food, and they want to go out as part of this experience, this leisure activity. People dine out for status. For example, business lunches. People eat now because of others of their social economic group do. It's part of your social economic group. It's part of your business activity, business lunches. Culture, tradition, for example, special events, or simply because it is a way of getting to know people. So hospitality restaurants, hospitality companies, hospitality institutions, hotels create so much pleasure for people. They are very important places of interaction where people get to know one another. And in lockdown, of course, in London, people can't go to bars. They can't go to restaurants. So they don't meet people. And people, there is a real now urge to open up because people want to interact with people. Impulse, for example, simply spur of the moment buying. We're out, we'll just go for a meal. No choice, for example, those in welfare hospitals and other forms of semi or captive markets. So if you're in a hospital, you're a captive market. If you're in a prison, you've got no choice. You have to eat the food that's given to you. Now, you have in front of you, hopefully, a core concept and possible factor ranking. Now, if you're going for a night out with your friends and family, you go, the number one thing you're looking for is atmosphere. And that's what we're basically today lacking with the lockdown. The food and drink, meeting people comes second, third service, fourth price, and five, you're not worried so much about cleanliness and hygiene. Although I think after the lockdown, more people will be concerned about the restaurant sanitisation. If it's a gourmet event and you're a gastronome and you're a gourmet, food and drink is high up on the agenda, and the service, then the atmosphere, the cleanliness and hygiene, and the price. Michelin star restaurants, people that go to Michelin star restaurants are really not concerned about the price. If you're going for a cheap takeaway, then the thing is that up high on the agenda is the price, then the food and drink, the cleanliness and hygiene, the service, and atmosphere doesn't really come into it. If you're a state banquet and you're being entertained by the Maharaja, by the King, by the Queen, by the Prime Minister, by the President, service is number one. Atmosphere, number two. Food and drink, cleanliness, hygiene, and there's never a consideration of price. Now, to create this meal experience, we have to design a product, a tangible product. It is therefore appropriate to consider the core concept in order to establishing the weighting of the meal experience factors. How much is the meal experience important, and the priority given to them by the customer, so that the operation can develop the product from this perspective. So how important when you design a product is the meal experience? And when we look at the meal experience factors, identifying the relative importance of the meal experience factors for different types of operation is valuable because it considers the operation from the point of view of the customer. And this is where we've talked about time and time again, we're customer driven. What does the customer want? The product customer relationship. This approach also identifies the limitations in the operation in one part of the meal experience will create stronger expectations in customers' minds than the other parts. For example, a limited menu operation will find that customers are more concerned with value for money and speed of service than they would be in the operation where the menu offered was a greater choice. So what we have to identify what's important to the customer in the meal experience. What part of the meal experience is important to the customer when we design the product? In all cases then, although the meal experience factors can be identified in all operations, the intended product will determine the emphasis or limitations placed on them. So all experiences, majority of the products and restaurants, the meal experience plays a part, more so than in some and less in others. This in turn will affect the potential customers' expectations of them, and this should then determine the priorities for operational development of the product. So when we develop a product, we have to say how important is the meal experience. And we have to explore the meal experience further. In order to continue to explore the product development more fully, it can be useful to consider each of the following meal experience factors. The meal experience, the food and drink, the level of service, the cleanliness and hygiene, the price and value for money, the atmosphere, and each of these factors is we have to consider. So we consider these with the efficiency. So competent and responsible can be intrusive. Customers are things to be processed. Customers are processed during the meal experience. Staff personality more important than competence. That the efficiency is lower. And no idea what they're doing and don't care. So we have to look at the staffing issues about the competency of staff, because customers have to be processed through. So we're looking at efficiency and conviviality are interdependent. And these are two key service dimensions. And they are independent. If the procedural aspect of service is poorly designed and delivered, resulting in overload and poorly motivated staff, it is likely that conviviality aspect will also deteriorate. Equally, if the convivial aspect is given too much prominence, then the level of service efficiency will drop. To reduce the potential for problems, a food and beverage operator can seek a balance with the level of service efficiency and the level of service conviviality. This is achieved through ensuring that both the key service developments and dimensions are always considered together when designing or reviewing the service being offered. So part of the meal experience, which is very important, is the food service. Food service is absolutely paramount in designing a number of operations. In many restaurants, and I've been in many restaurants throughout the world, often the food is good, but the service is not so good, or the service is good, but the food is not so good. And it's important to get that balance right. The level of service can also be affected by the standards being achieved. However, the level of service should not be confused with the standards of service. Low levels of service, such as in a fast food operation, can also be achieved with very high standards, which are consistent over time. On the other hand, an operation offering a high level of service, such as fine dining, can be poorly regulated and standards can be low and variable. And often, in fine dining, restaurants don't get the level of service right. Then we move on to cleanliness and hygiene. And this is going to be more important when we come out of lockdown. Customers will want to know after lockdown about how the restaurant is being sanitized. After lockdown and the pandemic, people will go into restaurants and they may even ask about how you're sanitizing the restaurant. People are asking now, if I go on an aeroplane, how is the aeroplane cleaned? Am I safe? Can I trust you? So what I've said to restaurants is, you publish to the consumer, to the customer, your policy on sanitization. The equipment is sanitized. The staff hygiene is important. You have a hygiene checklist. You have proper ventilation. And you have regular inspections. And you can say, our premises is inspected by the management after lunch and dinner to get this hygiene and sanitation right. This is going to be the key factor when we come out of lockdown. It is on transport, on buses, trains, airlines. I know that Etihad, the airline, is putting a lot of research and money into sanitizing their aircraft. Price is another element of meal experience that relates to value and is also directly related to profitability. However, price is also very flexible and can be changed relatively easy. Pricing methods used by operators vary in their appropriateness and sophistication. And the pricing methods we have differ. How you price your menus. Cost plus. This is the most common method. The ingredient is established, not always very accurately, and the required profit, referred to as gross profit, is added. The result is a selling price that gives the operator the required profit for that dish once sold. I'm sure you've all come across that. This method is actually very attractive because it's of its simplicity. However, it ignores price sensitivity and demand, because price is a determinant of demand, and that value for money must be factored into the pricing decision. It also makes the assumption that the required profit can be established by making a standard percentage of the selling price, often between 60 and 75%. But this approach fails to account for different restaurant types and different menu categories. It does not take into account each dish, beverage is only part of the collection of items purchased to produce the meal experience. Where the cost plus method is applied, differential percentages are used in the low-cost starter items and a proportionately more gross profit than the higher cost main course items. For example, you can make a great deal more gross profit on a starter, a fruit cocktail, for example, than you can a fillet steak or a fish dish. This also fits in with the price ranges that customers are expected to pay. Now, what you have to factor in is what is the customer expected to pay. Now, interestingly enough, the conversations I've had during lockdown with restaurateurs, and they say, can we to pay for all the extra sanitation, can we put the price up? And I'm saying tread very lightly, because it's very unlikely that you can put the price up, because I don't think the consumer at this stage, coming back to restaurants, the most important thing is to open up and get people back. I don't think at this stage it's a wise thing to put prices up. These prime costing methods, these methods attempt to factor in the labour cost of the dish, the actual cost price, and attempts to include fixed and variable cost as well as labour. These additional costs are also established as a percentage of the final selling price, e.g. labour at 25%, variable costs at 10%. So this is when you are factoring the labour and the variable costs. But as I've said on many occasions, these methods are flawed in the same way as cost plus. Labour is a factor related to time needed to prepare a dish, not to the value of the ingredients used to prepare it. No account is taken of the volume of business or the item popularity in assessing the labour content of the dish. Therefore, not taking into account economies and diseconomies of scale and allocating fixed and variable costs to each menu item should at least be related to the volume of each dish rather than a fixed percentage figure to be used for each menu item. Now, one method I like when it comes to pricing and relating that to the meal experience is backward pricing. Remember that, backward pricing. This method attempts to match cost to a price previously established for a desired potential market. This method attempts to match costs to the price precisely established for a desired potential market. And this is called backward price. How much is the customer prepared to pay for this meal, for this dish? And then we create a product with the ingredients that we can make a profit and sell it at that price. So we establish what the customer is prepared to pay. And this is, to me, is the best way because it's a market-driven approach. It is not really backwards, it's a starting point in new product development, but it is still difficult to establish the necessary gross profit, ingredient and labour costs, and care must be taken to the problems of using percentages. However, identifying what the customer is prepared to pay for a particular product and investigating whether the operation can provide that product and the profitability at that price may avoid an operation being created that was never going to be profitable anyway. So you create something that you know the customer's prepared to pay, and you create that product from beginning with the ingredients that you know will deliver the profit margin you want. How much is the customer prepared to pay? You know what your budget is. You know how much you are prepared to pay for something, for a computer, for a meal, your budget for travel. And that's where the starting point is. How much is the customer prepared to pay? However, identifying what the customer is prepared to pay for a particular product and investigating the operation can provide the product, the profitability at a price may or avoid an operation being created that was never going to be profitable anyway. So by doing this, you may find that you create something that was never going to be profitable anyway. I always give this example. Supersonic travel, Concorde airline, an engineering product masterpiece, an economic disaster. It was never going to pay at the profits that they want. So the airline Concorde was scrapped. Twice the speed of sound, fantastic engineering, but not profitable. So that it was scrapped after so many years. And there are many products that are being developed as we speak that, particularly in hospitality, that will never make a profit because the customer's just not prepared to pay. So we must always find out by market research what the customer is prepared to pay. Rate of return pricing. This method tries to establish price based on a forecast of sales and costs and may be used to produce a break-even analysis. This approach may help give a guide to the price range, but it will not in itself establish individual selling prices. Then we have profit per customer pricing. This establishes the total profit required and allocates this to a forecast demand, resulting in average profit per customer. And we want to know the average profit per customer. This profit is then added to the material and other costs to produce a selling price for each dish. Again, this may be used to break even analysis, but caution should be exercised because profit is a factor of demand, which is a factor of price, which is a factor of demand, and so on. So we have price sensitive and price conscious. And the problem is, if people are price sensitive, as soon as you put the price up, they stop buying the product or they go to a competitive product. If they're price conscious, they look at it, moan, but they still buy it. So, however, with pricing, relating the required profitability of an operation to a given level of demand and with a price range that the customers like to pay can be used in determining if the operation can in fact be successful. Can the operation be successful? However, as we practice pricing, relating the required profitability to operation to a given level of demand and with a price range that the customer would like to pay can be used in determining if the operation fact can be successful. Can you deliver this at this price? Can you deliver the meal experience at this price that the customer is prepared to pay? Elasticity pricing. And this is a key one. And this is what I'm being asked all the time by restaurateurs who are going into operation after lockdown because they've lost so much money and they need to generate more income. This asks how sensitive the market is to price changes. In order to determine menu prices, the operator will determine the effect a price change may have on demand. What happens if I put the price up? It should be remembered that if it is possible to increase demand and profitability through price decreases, so we can decrease the price but increase the volume. Yeah. So we're driven by price. There are some restaurants who are driven by price. They reduce the price and they increase the volume. So they make more money. However, this is very difficult to predict market responses to price changes, but considering elasticity may inform the pricing decisions. Competition pricing. It is complying. This is copying the competitor's price. However, there is no guarantee that cost structure of any competitor offering a similar product will be similar. So a particular market price may produce higher or lower profits. Copying the competition may also take the form of special offers, premier promotions, special meals, free wine, and the promotion of children's toys, all of which are short-term tactics which can potentially lead to increasing costs and fierce price-based competition. So we look at competitors. And here in the UK, we have supermarkets. And these supermarkets are highly competitive. They compare prices all the time. And two supermarkets are driven by price. They are driven that they are low price, and they make their money through high volume and low staff costs. So pricing is an experience. Yeah. When you go to some of these supermarkets, you go to a more upmarket supermarket, it's a different experience. You go to a price-driven supermarket, it's not so much a pleasant experience, but you can see the difference in the price. So atmosphere is an intangible element of the meal experience. It's created through the combination of a number of tangible factors such as design, decor, lighting, heating, furnishing, acoustics, and noise levels. The other customers, the staff, and the attitude of the staff are also important. It is the manipulation of these tangible factors which create the atmosphere or the restaurant mood. But all this comes after you work out what the customer is prepared to pay. So when we look at atmospheres, a happy atmosphere, and also gloomy, stressful, joyful, cheerful, angry, bustling, sedate, calming, invigorating, indulgent, peaceful, comfortable, uncomfortable, boring, inviting atmosphere. All of these different types of atmospheres can be created. But that depends on the customer and the buying power or the price the customer is prepared to pay. So we can create atmospheres. The bright, young, clean atmosphere of McDonald's, the lively musical atmosphere at Hard Rock Cafe, the farmhouse atmosphere of Harvester restaurants, the luxurious atmosphere of the restaurant at the Ritz, London, the cozy and formal atmosphere of the local French bistro are all created. So we look at the Ritz in London, we know price, we know what customers are prepared to pay. They're prepared to pay, they don't even look at the bill. So price is much less sensitive, creating the atmosphere of the Ritz. But in McDonald's, price is very sensitive. Yeah. And then we have the senses. Atmosphere creation and maintenance needs to be managed as it can be easily created as it can be destroyed. Atmosphere is sensed through sight, sound, touch, smell. And food and beverage operations use these senses. We use these senses to create the atmosphere. The sense of sight through the presentation of food and beverage products, furniture and textures, equipment, lighting, colours, employees, shapes, spaces, and their own customers. The type of customers that go in there is part of the senses. The sense of sound can be controlled through acoustics, the use of materials and shapes which alter sound, the use of music, televisions, operational sounds including speech. And speech is important. The way you talk to your customers. And that's important because I go to many restaurants and some restaurants train their people the way to talk, the way to smile, the way to greet customers. Others, they don't. And when you're greeted, when you go into a restaurant, is very important. The way someone looks at you, the way they talk to you, the way they welcome you is a first impression which is most important. The sense of touch will be incorporated, though, for instance, the quality of the air and fabrics and equipment which customers come into contact with. The sense of touch when you sit down is important. Are the chairs comfortable? The texture of the food and the touching of other people, although we won't be touching other people after lockdown. The sense of taste has created volumes of documentation dedicated through recipe and wine books, and the variations are almost infinite. When we talk about the touching of other people, before lockdown, many restaurants would greet their customers, their loyal customers, with a handshake. That will all go after lockdown. We have to go find another way, the Indian way of greeting people. The sense of smell is used by food and beverage operators to attract customers through coffee, bread, roast meat, and other aromas which may be associated with the core customer concept. We create smells in some restaurants, particularly coffee houses, where we let the coffee smell go into the road so that people walking by smell the coffee and it induces them to come in. So smell is very important. So customers have an impact on atmosphere. So there is a large range of customer related factors that operators need to consider which can affect the atmosphere. First of all, how close other customers are, and after lockdown that we've got to move the tables further away. How we space the tables, because customers won't want to be too close to other customers after lockdown. And then we have to make decisions about these policies. For example, we've always had to make policies on maximum group sizes, but it's going to be even more important in the future after lockdown. Size is very important. I've got a question. How can we reduce the cost in building the atmosphere yet keep it engaging? Do you think minimization can be the answer? I think that after lockdown, where we're going to have smaller groups. You see, restaurants in London have always done well when they're full and there's lots of atmosphere, lots of people. That's not going to happen. Tables are going to be further away. More people sitting outside. I think lots of towns are thinking of more pedestrianisation, getting rid of cars outside, widening the pavement so the restaurant can go outside more. And that will happen in a lot of countries where there's better weather than the UK. And that in itself creates an atmosphere. But inside the restaurant, that we can reduce the cost of the atmosphere by simply rethinking about the music, nice background music. That's often important in restaurants. It's a difficult one because we've never been this before, where we've got to reduce these costs in order to cope with the lockdown or the post-lockdown. But I would think you've got to be inventive about music, different styles of music in the background, which doesn't cost a lot. perhaps even some entertainment, a singer at dinner who's at a distance. Just think of innovative ways of creating the atmosphere. The atmosphere could be created by different uniforms, yeah, by different tablecloths or no tablecloths. A bit more theatre, for example, more food that's coming out on scissor flat trays which sizzle, and they sizzle in front of the customer. More carbon dioxide used to create smoke when you serve desserts. I think that there's all sorts of things that we have to think about in the future. Perhaps even atmosphere of more distant cooking at the table, such as more atmosphere of, say, crêpes Suzette may come back, cooking at the table. Create some theatre, some atmosphere in front of the customer. And that can reduce costs. But we have to reduce cost because, quite frankly, we have to say that cooking in front of the customer like crêpes Suzette is so cheap. The food cost is so cheap, and yet the gross profit is high, and customers love it. So we have to think about that. Creative things which create theatre, and I think to reduce cost is create theatre that's not going to cost a lot of money. And there's also an atmosphere is how customers behave. That's important because some customers don't know how to behave. I always say in this country, in the UK, customers don't know how to be customers. Some of them are very rude to the waiting staff. There's no need for that. There has to be a minimum level of customer behavior. How customers dress create atmosphere. Some restaurants, the minimum dress is smart casual. They don't allow people in shorts, for example. The way people dress creates an atmosphere. And again, to reduce costs, you could have one night or 2 nights of the week where you could say, we'll have a dress up day. We'll have a special night in the restaurant where people can dress to impress. That would be a good atmosphere. Dress to impress. A night tonight, dress to impress. And people do like that. People go on cruise ships because they love some of the evenings where they can really dress up. Another question, being in the food and beverage industry, do we take the fear of infestation of people to start eating out again? A large population will stop going out for food and beverage due to COVID. Well, I think that I was discussing this morning, and what we feel will happen in certain parts of London and country is that people have been locked down for 10, 11 weeks. It'll be nearly 15 weeks 15 weeks before the restaurants open up. And we believe that certain groups of people, particularly young people, will be going to restaurants. They will be going out and they will be saying, I've had enough of this. I've got to meet other people. So after lockdown, we strongly believe that there would be large sections of the population that will want to go out. There will be other sections of the population, the older, that won't want to, but there will be large sections that will want to.